Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome back to another on-the-road video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com. Today, we are working on a Samsung top-load washing machine. We will show you how to remove and replace your motor assembly. To begin, we must first tilt the unit back to gain access underneath. Stop. Before beginning any repair, always be sure to disconnect the power to the appliance. It is also recommended to test the outlet for the proper voltage. Remember to also turn off the water. The tools needed for this repair is a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a 10 and 17 millimeter socket, and a voltmeter. Now, with the unit tipped back, we have clear access to our motor assembly. The main reasons why you'd be replacing a motor assembly is if the unit won't spin, it could be giving different error codes that correspond to the motor, or maybe that it is pulling too high of an amp draw, or one of the magnets could be broken off on your rotor assembly, causing damage to the actual motor and causing it to make grinding noises. Maybe you'll get a loud squeal. Any type of noises could directly correspond to a bad motor. To begin, we must first remove this bracket that's holding it on. It is held on by 4 Phillips screws around the sides. Hold on to the bracket while you're removing the last screw so it doesn't fall. And set it aside. To remove your rotor from your motor assembly, there's a 17 millimeter socket that's on here. You have to hold on to the rotor and loosen it and keep holding on to it while you're taking it off. Remember, you have the socket, a small washer, as well as a large washer, but you want to keep them in that order when reassembling. So set them aside. Next, gently pull down on the rotor assembly and slide it off. Now that our rotor is removed, disconnect the wiring harnesses to your actual motor assembly. When you're disconnecting this one, you'll have to press in toward the front like this to pull out. And this one here, you press in on the sides and just kind of wiggle it out. Next, remove the 5 10 millimeter bolts that are holding on the motor. When you're at the last one, make sure you hold on to the motor and loosening it. Gently pull down and set it aside. When testing your motor, the first thing I would do is a visual inspection around the entire thing. Make sure the outsides aren't smashed, the internal portion of the actual motor isn't cracked in any way. Do a good visual inspection to the rotor. Make sure none of the magnets are cracked or maybe busted off. Make sure that your sprocket on each side is intact. If these check out okay, I would set your meter to ohms. Now on the tan portion where your Molex goes in, this is the main portion to your motor. No matter which way you go between these 3 terminals, you should have the same exact ohm rating. So the first test, running about 9 ohms. Nine ohms. And 9 ohms. So this motor is actually testing out good. Now, if your continuity is any different than what I am saying here, now you can plus or minus 10% on that reading. So anywhere from 8.8 ohms up to 10 ohms, you should be okay with the motor. But if you are getting a different reading or have any visible damage, you will probably have to replace it. Now we will install our stator. When installing your motor, you'll want to position it. Now each one of these holes should fit into holes on the actual transmission. You'll want your wiring harness to be pointed to where the wiring connectors are. Should fit in there properly. Make sure your connections are going to fit. Put one bolt in there by hand just to hold it. Tighten your bolt. Go around the perimeter and tighten the remainders. Now we can reconnect our Molex connectors. Now we can install the rotor. When you're installing your rotor, there's a sprocket that is laying on top of the rotor. Basically, it's got two different areas, a larger portion and a smaller portion. The larger portion feeds into the bottom of the transmission and goes into the directed spots on here. The smaller portion goes into this spot of the rotor. First, I recommend sliding it into the rotor and getting it locked into place. This can be very tricky as it has a square end to it. This has to slide perfectly onto this portion of the shaft to feed in there correctly. It might take a time or two to get it in there just right. That actually went pretty smooth, but sometimes when you're pulling it out and trying to turn it, that sprocket will fall down, so you might have to take it off 2 or 3 times to get it in there properly. But once it's in, you slide it all the way up and we can replace your washer and bolt. Slide in the larger washer, followed by the smaller one. Start to hand tighten your bolt. Use your socket and hold on to the rotor to tighten the rest of the way. Now we can reinstall our bracket. When installing your bracket, slide it into position. There are 2 plastic glides on each side. Slide them through the designated holes. Get one of your bolts into position. Hold your bracket and tighten it. Go around the perimeter and re-secure the other 3. And that will complete your repair. Thank you for watching another quality video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com.